Maya had always believed that love was a sanctuary, a place where she could be vulnerable without fear of judgment. Yet that belief shattered on a rainy afternoon when her fiancé, Guv, chose to humiliate her in front of their friends, laughing cruelly at the dress she had meticulously picked for weeks, comparing her to a character from a cheap drama she had never even watched. And the sting of his words cut deeper than she could have ever imagined, leaving her frozen cheeks burning, with embarrassment heart pounding violently as if it wanted to escape her chest. While the people around them laughed, some awkwardly, some mockingly, and Raghav stood there with a grin that felt like a dagger twisting in her soul. And that night, alone in her apartment with the rain tapping against the window like a sorrowful drum, she cried silently, the tears tracing rivers down her face as she questioned everything she had believed about love, trust, and worth, wondering how someone she had adored, someone she had invested her heart and dreams in, could be so petty, so cruel. And in that quiet darkness, mingled with the echoes of her own despair, she made a decision that would change the course of her life forever, a decision born from pain, defiance, and the raw need to reclaim her dignity. A decision to stop waiting for approval from someone who saw her as nothing more than a joke. No. To step away from the suffocating shadows of humiliation and step into the unknown with a boldness she had never summoned before. And almost immediately, fate seemed to answer her silent plea when her friends, sensing the turmoil behind her fragile smile, suggested a spontaneous trip to a hill station, a weekend away from the city. From the ridicule, from the constant reminder of her inadequacy in Raghav's eyes, and the idea intoxicated her. The thought of leaving behind everything familiar yet tainted stirred a wild, reckless excitement in her, compelling her to pack a small bag with essentials, ignoring practicality, in caution, and as she boarded the train, the rhythmic clatter of wheels on tracks mirrored the tumult of emotions in her heart. Anticipation intertwined with fear, sorrow with the thrill of escape, and it was on that platform, amidst the crowd of hurried commuters and distant announcements, that she first noticed him. Arjun standing a few feet away, tall, impeccably, dressed in a dark suit, his posture relaxed yet commanding, a briefcase at his side, exuding a presence that seemed to make the bustling station fade around him. And there was something magnetic in his calm gaze, something that made her heart skip in ways Raghav never had, prompting her to smile despite herself. And when their eyes met, a spark of recognition or, perhaps curiosity, ignited, leading to a conversation about tickets, travel, and mundane pleasantries. But in the cadence of their dialogue, laughter found its way to her lips, tentative at first, then freer, lighter, and by the time the train approached, she felt a strange sense of ease she hadn't felt in months. A fleeting yet powerful comfort in the company of a stranger who seemed to listen with genuine attention and without judgment. And as they traveled together through winding hills and glistening rivers, sharing stories, confessions, and laughter that seemed to erase the sting of past heartbreak, Maya found herself drawn to Arjun's enigmatic aura, the way his words carried subtle warmth, the way his smile seemed to understand her pain without a single prying question. And somewhere between the hills and mist, a reckless, impulsive thought took root in her mind. A thought as daring as it was absurd, that perhaps she could leave her past behind, not gradually, not with careful deliberation, but in one bold, irreversible act. And when Arjun, with a mischievous glint in his eyes, half teasing and half serious, suggested that they marry, Maya felt her pulse quicken, a wild cocktail of shock, fear, exhilaration, and defiance coursing through her veins, and before reason could reclaim its hold, before doubt could whisper warnings, she whispered, yes. A single word that carried the weight of heartbreak, rebellion, and a hunger for dignity, and in that moment, the mundane reality of a train ride transformed into a pivot of destiny. It's a spontaneous act that would intertwine her life with a man she barely knew in a bond that seemed simultaneously reckless and fated, and the arrangements were hastily made. A small impromptu ceremony in a quaint local office at the station, attended only by the minimal necessary witnesses. Yet every gesture, every word, every tremor in her chest as she repeated her vows felt monumental. as if the universe itself had conspired to allow her this moment of reclamation, of power, of audacious self-assertion. And as she slipped a simple ring onto Arjan's finger and watched him reciprocate, she felt a dizzying mixture of liberation and terror, for she had acted without foresight, without knowing his past, his intentions, his identity. Yet the impulsiveness itself was intoxicating, a heady taste of freedom after months of humiliation. And as the ceremony concluded and the rain continued its gentle patter outside, Maya felt the weight of the decision settle over her. Not as regret, but as a curious anticipation. A trembling wonder of what life would demand next, and when Arjun offered a quiet, reassuring smile, one that carried a calmness and strength unlike anything she had ever known, Maya felt a flicker of something she hadn't allowed herself in a long time, hope, raw and fragile, mingled with the adrenaline of her bold choice. And as they left the small hall, stepping into the misty evening, she realized that she had crossed a threshold, that her life had irrevocably shifted from one of heartbreak and mockery to a realm of mystery, possibility, and untold challenges. And even though her mind raced with questions, who was this man truly? What would the world say? How could she navigate this sudden upheaval? Her heart battered but unbowed, beat with fierce courage, for she had chosen herself in a moment of despair, had taken ownership of her destiny in a way that defied expectation. And as the train carried them back to the city, the mist curling around the hills like a protective shroud, Maya allowed herself for the first time in weeks to breathe, to feel alive, to imagine a life that was hers alone to shape, a life that began with an impulsive yes, but promised challenges, revelations, and perhaps unimaginable transformation. And as the city lights glimmered in the distance, the world waiting beyond the window, she understood that she had embarked on a journey not merely of escape, but of awakening, a journey that would test her resilience, her courage, and her capacity to love and be loved on terms that were completely unknown. Yet for now, in the delicate hush of the night, with Arjun's presence a steady counterpoint to the whirlwind inside her, Maya allowed herself to hope, to dream, and to embrace the audacity of a life rewritten by impulse, courage, and the quiet, inexorable pull of destiny. The morning after their impulsive wedding, Maya awoke with a dizzying mixture of disbelief, excitement, and anxiety. The events of the previous night swirling in her mind like a vivid dream she could neither confirm nor deny, and as she rubbed her eyes, the golden wedding band glinting on her finger served as the undeniable proof that she had indeed married a stranger on a whim. A man whose presence had captivated her in ways she could not yet articulate, and when Arjun casually sipped his coffee beside her, calm and composed as if nothing extraordinary had occurred, Maya felt a jolt of both admiration and trepidation, wondering who he truly was, what secrets he harbored, and how someone so enigmatic could have appeared at the precise moment her life felt most fractured. Yet even as questions swirled in her mind, there was an inexplicable sense of comfort in his measured demeanor, a stability that countered the chaos she felt within. And that fragile sense of ease only intensified when the hotel concierge arrived, handing her a sleek envelope sealed with an embossed insignia and a note that seemed to shimmer with promise, revealing that Arjun Kapoor, the stranger she had impulsively married, was no ordinary man, but the CEO of Kapoor Industries, a billionaire conglomerate whose influence stretched across continents, a man whose decisions shaped markets, lives, and legacies. And as Maya's trembling hands held the envelope, a tidal wave of emotions crashed over her: disbelief, awe, fear, and a curious thrill intertwining into a complex storm, leaving her heart racing in her mind, struggling to reconcile the audacity of her impulsive action with the magnitude of reality she now faced. And when she finally looked up at Arjun, he simply smiled, his expression calm, confident, and somehow reassuring, as though he had anticipated her reaction and found amusement rather than judgment in her shock. And in that smile, she saw not arrogance, but a quiet certainty, a sense of groundedness that contrasted sharply with the whirlwind of luxury, power, and expectations she had unwittingly stepped into. The drive back to the city was surreal. the sprawling skyline rising like a monument to ambition and achievement, every towering building reflecting the enormity of the world she had entered. And Maya clutched her small bag tightly, the tremor in her fingers betraying the storm inside. Realizing that she had not merely married a man, but had stepped into a life that demanded courage, adaptability, and resilience she had never before needed. And as the car glided past bustling streets, flashing billboards, and throngs of unaware city dwellers, Maya pondered the path that had led her here, the humiliation of Raghav's mockery, the impulsive decision in a hill station lounge, the strange magnetic presence of Arjun that had drawn her like a moth to a flame. And she could not deny the thrill of unpredictability, the intoxicating sensation of being swept into a world so far beyond her previous existence, and yet intertwined with that thrill was the gnawing fear of inadequacy, of failing in a universe where wealth, status, and power could crush the unprepared. And when they arrived at Arjun's penthouse, a structure of glass and steel that pierced the clouds like a testament to human ambition, Maya's breath caught, the vastness of the space, the panoramic views, the subtle elegance of every detail leaving her both awed and intimidated. And as they stepped inside, the soft hum of the city below, the meticulous decor, the rare art pieces, and the curated silence of opulence enveloped her. Maya felt simultaneously like an intruder and a privileged witness to a life she had never imagined. And Arjun, noticing her gaze lingering on the grandeur, gently guided her through the apartment, explaining with quiet confidence the story behind select items, his voice calm and inviting, and with each word, Maya realized that this man, so commanding yet so considerate, balanced his power with empathy, his authority with humility. And in that revelation, her anxiety shifted slightly toward curiosity, fascination, and even admiration, for she had expected arrogance, entitlement, or dismissal. Yet he offered none of these, treating her with the same respect and attentiveness he gave to every guest, every associate, every employee, and the realization that she was not merely a passive participant in this new life, but someone he acknowledged as significant, was both comforting and terrifying. For she understood that with his attention came expectation, responsibility, and scrutiny. And as days turned into nights, Maya gradually adjusted to the rhythm of her transformed life. Witnessing Arjun's meticulous routine, the precision with which he navigated meetings, negotiations, and decisions that affected thousands, yet even amidst the whirlwind of business and high society, he carved out moments of genuine warmth, inviting her to accompany him to charity events, introducing her to trusted colleagues with ease, and sharing quiet conversations that revealed the depth of his character. And Maya, who had entered his world impulsively, began to see facets of a man who was not defined solely by wealth or power, but by integrity, vision, and an unwavering sense of justice. And as she dressed for a grand charity gala one evening, adorned in a gown that shimmered like starlight, she could not ignore the whispering glances, the subtle admiration, and the hushed conversations of the city's elite, all fixated on the girl who had been ridiculed and mocked just weeks before, now walking confidently beside a man whose name carried weight, influence, and reverence. And in that moment, amidst the glittering chandeliers and the hum of polite conversation, Maya understood the paradox of her life. The impulsiveness that had once seemed reckless had granted her entry into a realm she could never have envisioned. Yet the grandeur, the attention, the expectations, all demanded that she find herself anew, that she cultivate strength, poise, and an identity resilient enough to survive scrutiny, envy, and the inevitable challenges that came with a union of such dramatic contrast. And as the evening progressed, Arjun remained attentive, patient, never flaunting wealth nor allowing her to feel inferior, guiding her gently through introductions, serving her comfort, and subtly instilling confidence in her presence. And Maya, reflecting on the journey from humiliation in a café to this glittering event, could not help but marvel at the twists of fate. The irony that the man she had married on a whim was both a stranger and a stabilizing force, a source of challenge and of inspiration, And as she watched Arjun interact with philanthropists, celebrities, and executives, noting the respect he commanded without arrogance, the genuine interest he showed in people's stories, and the quiet decisiveness with which he made choices that rippled far beyond the room, Maya felt a growing sense of admiration. Curiosity was perhaps the faintest stirrings of affection, for this man was unlike anyone she had ever known, a combination of mystery, power, and moral strength that both intimidated and fascinated her. And yet, as the night deepened and they returned to the quiet of the penthouse, Maya confronted the reality of her situation, the weight of impulsive decisions, and the necessity of learning to navigate a life so dramatically different from her own. Realizing that marrying a stranger had thrown her into an ocean of unknowns, where each wave could either uplift or overwhelm, and she understood that courage would not be found in avoiding fear, but in facing it. That dignity would not be reclaimed through impulse alone, but through perseverance, self-respect, and adaptation. And as she stood by the window, gazing at the city lights stretching endlessly below, Maya whispered to herself that the path ahead would be daunting, exhilarating, and transformative. And even though questions of identity, worth, and belonging swirled relentlessly in her mind, she felt a flicker of certainty that whatever trials awaited, she would face them with the same boldness that had led her to speak a single, life-altering yes to a stranger whose presence had upended her world. And in that moment, a quiet resolve settled over her like a protective cloak. For she understood that the story of her life was no longer written by humiliation, rejection, or fear, but by courage, chance, and the unfolding, unpredictable dance of destiny. As weeks turned into months, Maya began to navigate the dizzying complexities of her unexpected life with a mixture of awe, determination, and occasional fear, understanding that every moment with Arjun was a lesson in patience, courage, and adaptation, and she observed him not only as her husband, but as a man whose presence commanded respect, whose decisions affected countless lives, and whose kindness often shone quietly in ways that few noticed. From charitable initiatives that transformed communities to personal gestures that revealed a depth of character beyond wealth, and she gradually realized that the impulsive choice she had made in a hill station lounge had not been reckless, but transformative. For it had forced her into a world where she could no longer rely solely on others' validation, and had instead required her to discover her own strength, resilience, and voice. And despite initial insecurities and the subtle fear that she would falter in this new, opulent environment, Maya began to claim her place, speaking confidently at events, offering insights that surprised even Arjun, and forming relationships that transcended social hierarchies. And each small victory bolstered her self-worth, reinforcing the idea that her life was now defined not by humiliation or mockery, but by courage, intelligence, and the ability to embrace challenges. And as she observed Arjun, she noticed nuances of vulnerability that humanized the seemingly invincible man. The way he lingered on certain conversations, the quiet reflection in his eyes, the rare moments of laughter shared in privacy, and she began to understand that love, though unexpected and complicated, was forming not in grand declarations, but in these subtle, intimate exchanges. And yet, Maya's heart remained a careful balance of exhilaration and apprehension, for she knew that the world could never fully understand the story of their union. A marriage born of impulse, heartbreak, and defiance, and she faced the reality that societal scrutiny, envy, and gossip would shadow their every move. In private, Arjun acknowledged this with quiet reassurance, his touch, his words, his calm presence reminding her that she was not alone, that together they could weather both admiration and judgment. And slowly, Maya began to see Arjun not only as a stranger-turned-husband, but as a partner, a guide, and a mirror reflecting the best version of herself. Someone who challenged her gently, inspired her silently, and offered love in its most grounded, authentic form. And with every shared dinner, every conversation into the late hours, every glance that lingered longer than necessary, Maya felt the initial thrill of impulsiveness mature into a profound respect and deepening affection. And she realized that the spontaneous yes she had spoken had become a bridge to a life she could never have imagined. A life of luxury, challenge, growth, and unexpected joy, and yet the road had not been without obstacles, as moments of doubt, fear, and insecurity occasionally crept in, reminding her that she was human, that even in a world of wealth and power, the heart required nurturing, understanding, and courage to embrace vulnerability. And Arjun, perceptive and patient, recognized these moments, offering comfort without condescension, allowing her space to express herself, to falter, and to rise again. And in doing so, he earned not only her trust, but her admiration. For it was one thing to wield power, and quite another to wield it responsibly while preserving the dignity and autonomy of the woman beside him. And as Maya became more attuned to the rhythm of this extraordinary life, she also began to redefine her own identity. No longer the girl humiliated by Raghav, no longer the impulsive stranger in a billionaire's world, but a woman of strength, intelligence, and insight, capable of navigating complex social and emotional landscapes with grace. In the culmination of this journey came one evening when they hosted a gala for a philanthropic cause dear to Arjun. The grandeur of the venue shimmering with crystal chandeliers, the city skyline glowing beyond the glass walls. Yet Maya's focus was not on the spectacle, but on the subtle ways she had grown. The confidence she carried in her posture, the eloquence in her words, the warmth in her interactions, and as she moved through the room, receiving smiles, nods, and admiration. She felt the full weight of transformation, the realization that her life had shifted from humiliation to empowerment, from despair to agency, from impulsive decision to deliberate engagement. And in that moment, as Arjun approached her with his quiet, confident smile, she understood that the love forming between them was not the whirlwind infatuation of their first meeting, but a steady, enduring bond forged in respect, understanding, and the courage to face life's unpredictability together. And as they stood side by side, observing the lives their choices were impacting, Maya felt a deep sense of fulfillment, knowing that she had reclaimed her dignity not by escaping her past, but by embracing her present, her choices, and the extraordinary journey that had begun with a single act of defiance. And as the evening drew to a close, Arjun took her hand in his touch warm, reassuring, and full of unspoken promises. And in that gesture, Maya realized that the impulsive marriage that had once been a source of fear and uncertainty had transformed into a life of purpose, love, and shared vision. And she smiled, a smile that carried the weight of heartbreak, survived. Lessons learned, courage summoned, and love unexpectedly discovered. For she understood that the universe had led her to this man, this life, this destiny, not by chance, but through the resilience, boldness, and unwavering spirit she had found within herself. And as they looked out over the city lights, side by side, hand in hand, Maya felt a profound peace, a sense of completion not in perfection, but in the extraordinary journey of growth, discovery, and the unpredictable, exhilarating, beautiful adventure that was her life with Arjun, a life born of impulsive courage, transformed by love, and destined to flourish in ways she had never dared to dream.